So this is section 2.4, part 2. Okay, so now we're ready to factor our trinomial where we have x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, important for this first type of factoring, you cannot have a number in front here. Okay, so you see here it says where a is equal to 1. This is where you would have the a in front of this x squared. So for this type of factoring, if you have anything in front here, you have to take it out as a greatest common factor, okay? There should be no number in front of this. In section 2.5, we'll learn what to do if there is a number that you can't remove as a greatest common factor in front here. But otherwise, we should have, for today's work, there should be no number here, okay? So these are the steps for factoring this. As with any factoring question, the first thing we do is we check to see if we can take out a greatest common factor. Okay? So that's the first thing we do. So let's do that on this one as we go. So is there a greatest common factor? We're going to look at our letters. So we have x, x, no x. We can't take out an x. And then this is just a 1 in front here. 2, 8. So there's nothing else that can be removed. There's no greatest common factor. So the next thing we need to do is reorder. So let me write that here. Greatest common factor. No, there is not one. Next, we need to reorder in descending power of the variables. So here we have x to the 2, x to the 1, and then nothing. So this is in the correct order. So we don't need to do anything. Reorder. No. Okay. All right, so those are our checks that we need to do to start. Now we get into the real meat of factoring. We need to find two numbers that multiply to equal the last term, the c, and that add together to equal this middle term, b. Okay, so what multiplies to the end and adds to the middle? So we're going to set that up as blank times blank is equal to the end, okay, the end number, and in this case it's minus 8, and blank plus blank is equal to the middle, and in this case it's minus 2. So here's our end, the end goes with the multiplication, here's our middle, the middle goes with the addition. And notice here, if they're negative, you include the negative sign, okay? So how do we find these magical numbers that multiply together to give us minus 8 and add together to give us minus 2? So we need to write out all of the numbers that multiply together to give 8. So we need integers means whole numbers. So we need integers that multiply to 8. Okay, so we have pairs of numbers here, 1 and 8. So 1 times 8 gives us 8. And we have 2 and 4. 2 times 4 gives us 8. There are no other numbers that multiply together to give 8. Okay, so that means that you're going to have to be choosing one of these sets of numbers. So now we need to be able to choose the correct ones that are going to add up to be able to give us minus 2. And we can put negatives on any of the numbers that we want. So is there any way to combine 8 and 1 in such a way that it'll give us minus 2? Well, if we had negative 8 or negative 8 and 1, well, that would be negative 7. If we had negative 1 and 8, that would be positive 7. If we just added 1 and 8 together, we get 9. So there's no way to make this negative 2. All right, so that means that we're working with this set. So if we had negative 4 and 2, negative 4 plus 2 gives us minus 2. And when you write something in these lines, whatever you write in one, you have to write the identical thing in the other one. Minus 4 and 2. And let's just make sure, minus 4 times 2 gives us minus 8. Okay, so then we're going to set up brackets. We're going to write x in the front of the brackets. Okay, and then in one bracket, we'll write whatever we wrote here. So minus 4. In the other bracket, we'll write whatever we wrote here. So plus 2. And that is our final answer. So we have now factored our trinomial back to be two binomials. And if we wanted to check to make sure that this was the right answer, we could multiply this back out. We would go x times x to get x squared. We'd then get 2x. We'd have minus 4 times x minus 4x. And then minus 4 times 2 would be minus 8. And then we would add up those middle terms, and we could go backwards to get back to this. Okay. So now we're going to try another one. We're going to try B. All right. So first thing we're going to look at, greatest common factor. We'll look at our letters. We have z squared, z, and nothing. So there's no letter that we can take out. Then, is there anything in front here? There is not. There's no greatest common factor that we can remove at all. So no. Do we need to reorder? Well, if we look at our exponents, they go 2, 1, nothing. So they're in the correct order. So now we need numbers that multiply together to give us 7. Okay, we're looking for numbers that multiply together to give us 7. So 7 is a prime number. So the only thing that multiply to give 7 is 1 times 7. So that makes it a little simple for us. So we know that we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us our n number. Our n number is 7. Two numbers that add to give us our middle number. Our middle number is minus 8. So how are we going to combine 1 and 7 to give us minus 8? So we're going to use minus 1 and minus 7. Those add up together to be minus 8. And then if we multiply minus 1 and minus 7 together, we would get a positive 7. So for our brackets, this time we're using a z. Oops. So we're going to put that in the front of our brackets. In one bracket, we're going to have minus 1. In the other bracket, we're going to have minus 7. Now what happens if you wrote these reversed? Like let's say you wrote minus 7 here and minus 1. So then this bracket would be minus 7 and this one would be minus 1. That's fine. It doesn't matter that your brackets, what order your brackets are in. So this whole bracket could be over here and this one could be first. It doesn't matter what order the brackets go in. Okay, as long as you have the right numbers in there. All right. So that is the basics of how we do factoring. Now, what about some where you have to reorder? So these next two are not in the correct order. Let's take a look at them. So first, we still look for a greatest common factor. We always look for that first. So here, there's an x, no x, x, can't take out a letter. Our x squared at the front, there's nothing in front of it. There's nothing that can be that can go into all of these that we can take out. So no, and now in terms of reordering, we have x to the 2, nothing, and then x to the 1. So yes, we do need to reorder here. They're not in the correct order. So we're going to rewrite this as x squared minus 6x plus 8. So that's our first step. Next, we'll write out our things. So we're going to have two numbers that multiply together to give us our last number, which is 8, and two numbers that add together to give us our middle number, which is minus 6. So now we need to know all the things that multiply together to be 8. So we have 1 and 8, and we have 2 and 4. Some people don't need to do this to write these down, okay? And they just look at this part and it just jumps out at them what two numbers add up to be minus 6 and multiply together to be 8. So you don't have to write this out if you don't need it, but it can be very challenging to figure this out if you're not super fast with your times tables without writing out this, okay? All right, so how can we combine these numbers? So there's no way of combining 1 and 8 to be minus 6. We're going to have to use 2 and 4. So we want to get to negative 6. So we're going to have negative 4 and negative 2. And if we look at that, that would add up to minus 6. And then whatever we write on the bottom, we need to write the same thing on the top. Minus 4 times minus 2 would give us a positive 8. So we're going to now write our brackets. We put our x's at the beginning. And then one bracket we have minus 4, and the other one we have minus 2. Okay, here we have our next one. So we're going to look for greatest common factor first. So 30x squared and 13x, there's nothing common that we can take out. And then we reorder, and in this case, yes, we need to, because we have nothing and then x squared and then x. They're not in the right order. So we're going to reorder this as x squared plus 13x plus 30. Okay, we're going to need two numbers that multiply together to give 30 and that add up together to give 13. So that means that we need all the numbers that multiply together to give 30. So let's list them out. We have 1 and 30. We have 2 and 15. We have 3 and 10. And we have 5 and 6. So if you're unsure of how to find these, always start with 1 in the number. And then just take your calculator and count up. Do 30 divided by 2. Do we get a whole number? If so, write it down. 30 divided by 3. Do you get a whole number? If so, write it down. 30 divided by 4. Oh, there's no whole number for 30 divided by 4. 30 divided by 5. Yes. And once you get numbers that are like this right next to each other, then you can't go any further. Okay, that's the end. Okay, so how are we going to get numbers that add up to 13? So we're going to look at these and see, do any of these add up to 13? So 30 and 1, no. 2 and 15, no. 3 and 10, yes. So we can write 3 and 10 and 3 and 10. 3 times 10 gives us 30. 3 plus 10 gives us 13. So our brackets this time, we write our letter in the front, x, x plus 3, x plus 10. And that's our final answer. So you're going to pause here and you're going to go to page 91 and do question 7, just the left-hand side. And then we'll come back for part 3.